What's up, guys? Welcome back to Lady Moto Bang. I'm Ashton. So my last video, I made a custom leather tank knee pad for my vintage Honda. So I got a bunch of requests to do a tutorial video. I'll show you guys how I do it. I've got a bunch of specialty tools for making stuff from leather. I'll be using those tools, but along the way, I'm going to show you things that you can use that are probably just laying around your shop to get the job done. So I want to walk you guys through the process, how to do it. This isn't a really hard project, especially if you've never done any kind of leather work before. This isn't something I think that is going to be skill prohibitive. Most people who have a pretty good attention to detail will be able to knock this out and it'll look great. So first things first, you're going to need some leather. This is about 6 or 7 ounce leather. That's how they sell it. It's just the thickness of it. This is just veg tanned. It's going to be rough on one side, smooth on the other side. You don't have to buy a big roll of leather like this. You can actually just find 12 by 12 inch pieces of leather on Amazon. Just make sure you get something that is about 1/8 of an inch thick. That way it's still thick enough to be durable, but not so thick that it's hard to get it on the gas tank. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the face of the knee pad itself. We're going to sew like basically a lip that's going to be able to fit behind this piece of metal right here. So one thing I wanted to do when I made this tank pad is I did not want to just buy something that I could 3M tape on here. This is actually fit around the back of this ridge right here, and that's how the original rubber ones were. So the first thing that we need to do for this project is to make a template. All right, so the first thing I did was I took a piece of paper and I scored around the edge of where the tank pad needs to go. So I put my stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the outside curve. This is the outside curve, and I brought my measurement out 1/8 of an inch and then another 1/8 of an inch to make it about 1/4 inch wider than the actual bracket thing itself on there. So that is the size of the first piece of leather that we are going to cut. All right, so I cut a few pieces down to size. So we are now going to cut the front and the back of the leather out. And all you really need is a pen. You can use a pen. I like the pen, not a Sharpie, because it's a little more accurate. Because we're going to be dyeing this black, I'm also not worried about any of the pen showing up in my final project, but it is just going to be around the edges, and the edges end up getting beveled away anyway. So we're going to go ahead and trace this and then start cutting it out. All right, so this is the back, because this was the other side of the gas tank that this template came from, and I need to remember that when I am making my cuts and my when I start adding the design on it. Right, there's one. Now I'm going to flip this over, and this is going to be the front. All right, not bad. We've got our 2 pieces here. So we're going to use, there's a lot of different things you can use, specialty tools, but I'm just going to use my box cutter, and very carefully I'm going to cut these shapes out. And it's going to take several cuts. Don't try to do this in one like really deep cut unless you've got a super sharp knife. I keep this one sharp. Make sure I'm always using a sharp one, but because we're working with leather, you can always hone it a little bit before you start. And we're just going to carefully go around, start scoring this, and just get deeper with every pass and try to get nice, clean, the cleanest lines we can, and make sure you try to stay perpendicular. Don't cut in at an angle, because we want these to be as flush to each other as possible when we put them together. Don't try to cut on the right on the line. Do your best to stay on the outside of this line. Give yourself plenty of work room on the back end of this project. Don't want to make everything the exact size that it needs to be when you're cutting this stuff out. You go around these curves. I like to cut a few straight lines away from the curve just to make that as smooth as possible. I'll keep working on this and be right back with you guys. All right, so I got these cut out and I need to set this one aside. This is the back, and not even look at it because I don't want to accidentally do all this work on it and then it's not the right one. But this is the front part of it. Got it all cut out. So the next thing we need to do is put the lines on here for where this is where the stitch line, not the stitch line, but this is where the outside of the actual piece of metal is itself. So I need to put a stitch line about 1/8 of an inch out, and I also need to put a line in here for where the design is going to start. So I need to put this line, and then there's an imaginary line here. So you can use a couple of things to do this. If you have, if you have a compass or whatever this is called, you can use this for it. If not, a pair of just regular calipers will work for this. But all I'm going to do on this part is I've got my template, so I'm going to go ahead and lay this line in. So I've already done it, but let's see, it's kind of shiny in here. I'm going to make that the same width, and we're going to wet this leather down. You can use a spray bottle for this. Don't completely soak the leather. I brought a little bit of water out here in the shed for me for this project, and I'm out of shop towels. So I'm just going to use a little rag here. I'm going to just wet the surface of this down real quick. And leather is moldable. That's how you get all of the cool leather designs and belts and stuff. It's called tooling, and that's basically what we're going to be doing here. Got that laid down, and then I'm going to real carefully use the edge of this leather and score this line. You don't have to press very hard. Just take your time with this part. All right, we got our first line down, and now I'm going to make 1/8 of an inch line off the edge, about right there. Looks pretty good. And I just checked my work on my other knee pad, and leather's pretty forgiving. If you go off a little bit, it's gonna be able, it's not really gonna, you won't be able to see it. As long as you're not pressing too hard, it'll kind of disappear throughout the whole rest of the process. All right, and that is gonna be our stitch line. So the next part, before I attach the back to this, I'm going to put my design in here. We're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna get it wet again and put our design on here. All right, again, because this is gonna be in black, I'm gonna use this ink pen, and I'm going to go ahead and mark where I want my lines to be. This isn't how you do it when you're making like a belt or something. You put a stencil over the top and you use a little specialty like a tool like this. This is, people use this for model, like making little clay models as well, but it's also part of a lot of online beginner leather tooling kits, and they'll put a stencil over the top. So if there's something that you want to do like specialty, put a cool design on there, what you would do is you get tracing paper, trace the design on top, wet your leather down, put the design over, and then you'd use something like this to trace the pattern on there, and you take the paper away and it'll be an impression just like this on top, and that's when you go ahead and start the tooling process. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep it simple. So I want these lines to be 1/4 of an inch apart. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those and with my ink pen, and then we'll come back. All right, got it done. So this part is where we're going to actually use these lines to add the grooves. Kind of went one after the other to make sure everything kind of looked parallel before I laid that down. You could have skipped the ink part if you wanted to and just go for it. with something like this. They make, again, specialty tools. You can use this. This is just a little pick I have. I think that before I used this to lay the line down because I wanted the line to have a little bit of a width to it. So I'm actually going to use a screwdriver for this part. So we're going to go ahead and wet the leather again because it dries out pretty quickly since it's not completely saturated. I'm going to use this ruler as my guide, and I'm going to set these grooves in. I'm going to be real careful not to go over this outside line that I put down. Go over it a couple of times so it's nice and defined. Can't really tell because there's ink in there, but that's nice and set down in there. All right, got those set in. I don't know if you can tell, but it's pretty deep ridges on there. So final step for this tooling part is going to be beveling this edge. You don't have to use a beveler. So this is a beveler tool. It's for tooling. I've got some pretty extreme angled ones too. So this is a little knife for cutting around the edge to make the bevel more extreme. I'm going to use this. You can do the same thing, obviously, with a box cutter if you want to. Don't go very deep with this if you're going to do this part. You can completely leave this part out if you want, and you can just go ahead and score this edge a lot deeper. And then I'm going to bevel it. You can do the same thing I did with the screwdriver. You don't have to actually bevel it, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go real slow, nice and careful. And it swivels around. You put your finger there, hold it like that. It's for making like intricate like flowers and stuff when you're making like belts and stuff like that. This is just going to help the leather pop. When you cut this, score this line in here for when you do lay this bevel in, it gives it more of a defined edge. All right, got that laid in. I'm going to wet the leather again. So this is my mallet for tooling. Obviously, this is just something heavy, like, you know, it's a hammer. So you can just use whatever. Don't go crazy though. So if you're going to get a ball peen, just chill. This is not an expensive little tool. If you want to get one, you could probably find something in your garage laying around that will work just as well with a little angle on it, or you can make one out of something. But just basically you're going around the edge here and you are creating a drop off where we cut that line. Just go nice and steady. All right, that's all beveled. You can see there's still some marks. You can kind of see where the individual hits were. So wet it down again. Let it sit for like 3 seconds. Let the water set in there, and then I just take the beveler, since I've already got that nice line, and I'll go in here and smooth it out. We're going to move on to the next step here. And the good thing about this leather is that it's pretty, I mean, we've been using leather for a few thousand years now. It's really durable, good to have something that's not going to mess up. This isn't like patent leather or like faux leather. Nothing's going to peel up. Like, this is a solid piece of hide. So this is going to last a long time, and we're still going to be able to take it off the tank if we need to take it off the tank. So now the next part is we're going to attach this back. So this is going to be the lip, but I found if I cut this out beforehand, the leather would kind of release the tension and it would become too big and end up being bigger than the actual front part. And then if I sewed it on that way, I would have had portions that came out way too far and we're not actually going to be gripping behind that piece of metal. So we're just going to go ahead and glue this on with this still being one solid piece. Rubber cement, easy enough. And we're only going to do about the first, I'd say, 1/4 inch of this. Ooh. A lot of the leather guys, they like using this rubber cement. There's also online leather glue that they sell, but it's like the really cheap stuff. It's basically Elmer's glue. So I just use this. You can use a lot of different kinds of glue. Just make sure that it's something that works well with fabric or something like that. Keep in mind, when we cut this out, we cut these out mirror images of each other because this is the rough edge. Now this is a finished rough edge, but it's still the rough edge. We want these to be the edges that get glued together. Obviously, it's better for adhesion. And something else you can also do that helps adhesion, I've got that set down. I'm going to try to do this quickly, is take something sharp like this. You can use a knife edge and just score the edge like this. Something I probably should have done. Score that edge for that glue to sit in. Should have done that on the front part, but I forgot. Some of these edges on when you get a piece of leather might still be like really rough. So you won't even need to do this. Try your best, especially on that piece that's going to be on the outside. Try your best to not get any of this on the front, because it'll definitely be at least noticeable to you that you got some glue on there. Come off. Can you hear that? Can anybody else hear that train? All right, these are set up. Just layer down, line it up. All right, this is nice and set up. So now I'm going to show you guys how we put the stitch line in. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to kind of shore up the edges here, make the edges nice and smooth before I do this next part. So you can use a little Dremel if you want, go really easy on it. Some guys, they use the tiny little belt sanders to do it, but you don't like be overly aggressive with it. I'm just basically trying to make these edges kind of flat to each other. So I've got some 60 grit sandpaper and I'm just going to go for it. So I'm just going to get these edges as close to smooth, especially on this top part, because, you know, I've got little cut marks and stuff and I don't want that to affect this next step. All right, this next step you can skip, but I'm going to do it because I have the tools for it. So this is basically, it's a little tool. It's got a hole in it and it's sharp on the back. I've got this little bar on here to set the width. You can see it's a little bit longer than this itself. This cuts, basically it cuts a channel for my stitches to recess themselves into. You don't need this at all, but I'm going to do it. And that's why I wanted this edge nice and smooth, because this bar is going to glide along the edge and guide this little cutting edge to remove just a little bit of material so that my stitches will seat nice and deep into the leather. So I'll show you how it works. Again, you don't need this. You could also set this in a lot deeper if you wanted to with a pair of calipers, but you're not removing any material. So you're still going to have to go through just as much leather. Basically, it just glides along the edge. I put it here at an angle. You can kind of see, got a little bit of little tiny ribbon of leather coming out. And that's it. All right, now we're just going to start punching holes for the stitches. Another specialty tool, you don't need this. You could sharpen something down. You could find an ice pick if you had an ice pick. If you want to do really quick, easy work, really old school work, get something like this. Or you could get an awl, AWL awl. and do them one by one. But I have these little stitch picks. If you get these, especially for the thickness of this leather, don't get something where the stitch points are super close together, because it will grab in the leather and it's just like really tedious work. It's really hard to get it out, to go all the way through when you're hitting it with the hammer or the mallet. So get something where they're nice and spaced out, especially for something like this. This is really thick leather. This isn't like really fine work. If you were doing something like making a wallet, you would get something kind of like this. And it will go through thin leather just fine, especially as many stitch holes as this would make. This would just be absolutely impossible to use for me to get through my work. So even something like this at this point, this would be a pain in the ass. So I'm not going to use this. I'm going to start my work with this, do my best, and then I'm going to go back through with my favorite little awl right here, and just ensure that I've got holes all the way through the back after I do that. I've got this piece of plastic that I use. You can see it's pretty beat up. I use this as my backing. You can do it on a piece of wood. I don't like using it on this because I don't like to mess this up. But all we're going to do is I'm going to use that stitch line, go through with this, and go ahead and start knocking holes in for these stitches. Make sure you're keeping these perpendicular, straight up and down. You don't want it coming out, going this way, like coming out the edge or going in too far. So it'll mess it up. Just try to keep it nice and straight up and down. You just use the, if you do use one of these, all you do is you line it up in the next hole here. Kind of wiggle it out. See what I was talking about getting stuck? There, you can see that one kind of poked through a little bit. All right, I'm going to keep working on this. This will probably take me about, I don't know, 4 minutes, and get back to you. All right, so got that all set in. Hello. And then you can kind of see I've got the little holes are kind of poking out the back right there. So they make specialty parts for this right here. I don't have one that I like, so we're going to use the vise. We're going to start sewing, or sorry, my mostly male audience, we're going to start doing like upholstery work. You guys don't know how to sew? It's too complicated. I'm just playing, just joking. All right, I'm going to get this set in here. Using this just to, if the leather's still wet at all, I don't want to like leave any impressions on it. So we're just going to get it kind of set in there. It's not going to really go anywhere, but it's not very tight. I'm going to use that towel to protect it. And we're going to start sewing. All right. This is something you're definitely going to need to buy. This is a big, thick, heavy duty needle. They make, don't get one that's too big, but you're going to need 2 of these 2.5 inch long heavy duty needles. You see those? And you're going to need to get some of the thread that you want to use. Now, I have black thread laying around. This is waxed thread. You can use nylon if you want to use like some heavy duty nylon. Since I'm dyeing this black, it doesn't really matter what color thread I use, but I happen to have black thread already. If you're going to go with something brown, obviously you need to pick your thread choice and sew it after you've dyed it the color that you want to dye it. So if you're going to go with like a light chestnut brown, or you want to go with like a darker brown, walnut brown, but you want like red thread or yellow thread or green or something like that, dye this. This would be the point where you would dye this the color that you want it to be, and then you would sew it together. So here's what you do. There's a million videos on how to do this, by the way. If I'm explaining, not on how to like make this tank pad, but this sewing portion, there are so many videos on how to do this by hand. you're gonna get a lot of thread, like twice the amount of thread that you think it would take, because we are going to be putting the needles on both ends of this. This is the circumference of what I'm sewing. I need at least double that, but I'm gonna do like twice as much. Like, we're talking a lot here. This would be like a fishing hook tutorial, how to tie a fishing hook. All right, thread your thread through. Okay, got it? Come down a little ways. And then you're going to stick the needle through the middle of this thread. Poke the thread. You see that? We've got it coming through that thread. All right. I'm going to pull it all the way down. It's going back through itself. I'm going to pull it tight like that. So that's one end. We'll do the other end. You can tell this one's a little bent because couldn't get it back through a piece of leather, so I used some pliers to pull it all the way through, which you might need. All right, got it through. Taking it, and I'm shaking because I had coffee and I haven't had lunch yet. We're gonna sticking it through the middle, impaling the thread. Pull it down. Now we're gonna lace it up. So now I've got a super long piece of thread that's still not going to be long enough, with 2 needles on the end. So this is not the best angle for this. This is a poorly made YouTube video, if you guys haven't figured that out. I'm going to use my awl. You can use whatever pokey thing you're using. I've got my little tiny holes on the back, and if I can't get a needle all the way through, I'll use this to just go ahead and poke out the back. So here we go. This is how this works. We're going to run this all the way through. Even amounts. Okay? All the way, halfway. Bring your thread through. That's the first hole. Now, take one needle, put it through the back here, pull it through that same hole, the opposite way. Come with the new needle, the one you didn't use yet. Oops. Now you've got 2 little bunny ears on the side here. Run your needles through. Whoops, I got stuck on the. Run your needles through the bunny ears. Pull that sucker down. That is 1 stitch. I'm going to do it again. Wish that wasn't hanging down through there. So 1 through that way. When you're doing this, I like to pull this thread to the back and then angle my next needle that way, so I don't thread through, or I don't push the needle through the thread, and then you got a problem because you got to go back through and undo it. Got my little bunny ears. Going through one bunny ear, next bunny ear. The thread's getting stuck on every part of this vise because it's so long right now. All right, and then we pull it through. Boom. We are laying that down. All right, I'm going to time myself, see how long this takes. Done with the stitching, except for the last part I got to show you guys. But if you're wondering how long it took me, I listened to the entirety of Pat Benatar's Best Shots cassette tape, front and back. So longer than I thought it would, but I don't mind spending some time with Pat. So, all right, so let me show you how to finish this off. All right, so we got our last stitches done. we're just gonna run this back one stitch. And we're going backwards now. So we ran that back through backwards, pull it back. We're gonna just do a simple little knot here. And for anyone wondering, no, I didn't use enough thread. So I had to do this once already. We're gonna double tie this. Boom, just make a little box knot. Boom. Cut it real close. Got that. Since this is wax covered. We're doing this on the back, by the way, not the front. Melt that down a little bit. Gets bubbly. Press it down. And then this is my other spot I had to do it on. As usual, I did not use nearly enough. All right, now we're done. It is sewn on. Now I'm gonna cut this part out. So we have our lip. This isn't the easiest way to do it, but it was the most accurate way I could find to do it. All right, so the first thing I did, the way that I determined how to cut this was to figure out what clearance this was, how deep that went behind there. All right, so I'm sticking this back here. I'm gonna figure out what this clearance is. We're right at just shy of 1/2 inch. Yep, 7/8. I'm gonna make that 7/8. That's about right. Looks like it's right there. Here we go. Oh, we need to do it off of the thread line, don't we? All right, we're doing it off of the thread line, guys. This outer diameter line, or most inner. Let's get that cut out. I'm gonna see how much sharper my X-Acto knife is. All right, I got that. I'm being super careful. This X-Acto knife is super sharp. Being super careful not to go through this, obviously. Now that I've got this lip on here, I'm gonna hold it and carefully go through, pulling up as I drag this knife along like that. And it's gonna help me out a lot. All right, got this cut out, looks good. I've got this little tool I'm going to use. Again, use whatever you got lying around. I'm going to get up under this edge and release any kind of glue that there might have been past that thread line. And it's also going to help me get this thing ready to put on the bike. You open all this up. All right, there's our lip. We're done. I had an extra one of these lying around. This is to bevel the outside edges. They're pretty squared off right now. And you can use a knife, just use some sandpaper. Again, I've got this specialty tool, so beautiful, guys. Look at that. All right, we're almost done with this project. Looks pretty rough, right? Well, it's gonna look awesome in a couple of minutes. So now we're gonna dye this. Can't really tell. This is black leather dye that I spilled on itself. Get it on, you can get this at like Hobby Lobby if you don't want to order any, or just get it off Amazon. And we've got some neat's foot oil that we're going to put on there first. So if you don't have this laying around, some people actually do use it for other things. You can use just regular canola oil or vegetable oil. So we're going to lay this down on here. Whoops, good thing I'm painting this black. So we're going to put this on here. Basically, it's going to even out the tone of the leather first and help it accept the dye, and it also nourishes the leather so it'll last longer. These are just little daubers. You don't need these, obviously, with most of this stuff. You don't need everything I'm showing you. You can just use a paper towel, cotton swabs. Super satisfying. Now, I would suggest if you're doing this, if you get to this stage, test fit this on the tank. Make sure everything's gonna fit. Since I already made one of these and I have a template, I'm not test fitting it anymore. I don't need to. Basically, I already know that it'll be just fine. Make sure everything gets nice and soaked in. Man, those lines are popping. They look good. All right, it's been like 20 minutes. This is pretty dried out. If it's completely dry, I like to do it when it's not like 100% dried out. So it just seems to soak up better. All right, there's my little dauber. I'm gonna try my best to not get this all over myself. Here we go. Jet black. I'm gonna let this dry for, I'll come check it in like an hour. And then we're gonna put a nice burnished, shiny-ish edge, finish the edge real quick. And then I'll show you how to get it on the gas tank. It's pretty tight fit, but it goes on there. It's definitely not like trying to get a steering wheel cover on. It's a lot easier than that. It's tight, but we want it to be tight. Windy outside. I went inside and watched some YouTube. Smells bad for you. All right, I got everything prepped up. So we're gonna clean up these edges. They're a little rough right now. Whoa, where's my camera? They're a little rough right now, and we're gonna smooth them over. So this is a burnishing tool. It's just a wooden dowel with different size grooves in it. So you can use something like it's just like rounded over if you wanted to use a screwdriver like that. You can use plastic if you want to use plastic. It's anything round. All we're going to be doing is putting a little water on here and creating some friction. They also make little attachments like this. You can put that in a Dremel and use it. I don't really like these, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I've got my little bit of water. Got my, start right here. Just gonna wet it a little bit. I take my tool. I'm gonna use this bigger part right here. And I'm basically just gonna start creating a little bit of friction. I'm not pressing down very hard, but I can kind of tell when I've got the right amount of pressure. it's going to start basically heating up this edge and burnishing it. So now I've got a smoothed over edge. This is my rough edge. And then my smooth edge. It doesn't really take that long to figure out like how much pressure you can get this stuff. It's kind of an art form for the like super high-end leather goods. You can get this stuff glass smooth. Look at that. It's not too bad. What you can also do, like if you don't have something curved like this, I could use this end like right here, just like this, and do the same thing. And then I could work on the sides a little bit and round them over. Push that back over. Oh. Like I said, you could try it with plastic. It'll work, but I find that because of the way the wood is, the characteristics of it, it just works better. All right, I have this all done. The edges are nice and burnished. Now, if I wanted to, I could put some, it's called edge gum on the end and do it all over again, the same method with the water, and it'll seal the edges up. I might do that later, but it's just another one of those optional things. It's just, you know, I'm trying to keep this budget and show you guys that it's not super expensive, but it's called Burnishing Agent Gum Tragacanth or whatever. It's just more stuff you can buy on Amazon. Not super expensive, but if you're only doing this one thing, I wouldn't get it if I were you. You can just use some kind of wax, put some kind of wax on the edge if you want. So here's the part that we've all been waiting for. We're going to put it on here. So I already went around with a towel and a screwdriver and went around here and kind of pried this edge of this lip away. So I have plenty of room to work with. And everything's nice and dry. So we're going to put this on. So first things first, we're going to soak this in water. And we're going to do it the easy way for the camera. All right? It's not going to hurt it. This is just going to make it, basically it'll make it where it's nice and malleable. It'll dry, it shrinks back after it dries. I'm going to get this on here, soak it down. Now normally I'd get like a Tupperware and where I'd put it running under the water in the sink, but I'm out in the shed way in the backyard. We don't have plumbing out here, so get this nice and soaked, and I think it is good enough. All right, got this very much soaked down all the way through. I could fold this in half and it would stay. It's basically like clay. So I'm just gonna get behind here, pull this edge away, and I'm going to start with the pointy end because this is going to be the hardest part to get on if I wait till the last part. Stick it on there. Now I'm going to go all along the bottom here. I'm pushing that up into place. I'm taking this part, pulling it out, pulling this lip away from the front. Gonna get that started underneath. I'm gonna pull this lip around the edge. Now that it's on there, push that up into place. Take this top part, start pulling that lip back. Pushing it down in the back. Getting it over that lip, folding it, push it. And that is pretty much on. Now I just got to take it and push it back down flat behind that lip. Now, that is on there. It is tight around all the sides, and that's it. Got it on. So this is gonna shrink down over this. If I needed to get it off right now, it wouldn't be that hard. I'd just basically pry it out from behind that lip. If for whatever reason I want to get it off in the future, like I want to change it out, do a different pattern, fix it, just make sure it's not like super rusty or something behind, I don't know. I would just wet this back down with just the garden hose outside and let that water soak into it. And then I'd pry it right back off. Also, if I wanted to, that metal lip that I just slightly pried away, I could push it back down through here and get it more snug up against the tank. I'm not going to do that. So my final step on this is I'm going to put some mink oil on here, but you can use anything, really, leather protectant, anything to put on this that you've probably got in your car washing stuff. Any kind of leather wipes or something for like the inside of your car. You can use mink oil, like I said, saddle, any kind of saddle oil stuff for your leather boots, any sort of protectant you want to put on here. Just put it on there, keep it on here. Just keep in mind, if this gets out in the sun and it doesn't stay moisturized and it's like out in the elements and you don't have this in the garage or you don't have it under a cover, it'll get like dried and cracked. It needs to stay moisturized. So just keep something on it. Every time, if you're going to wash it, wash this gas tank, wash the bike or anything with regular soap, just after you're done, put something, feed the leather, put something on there, some kind of oil or something. Hell, you could probably put motor oil on it. Just keep it moisturized. So, but yeah, so this is pretty much how you do it. I know every gas tank's different. This is the 1963 CL72 gas tank. The rubber knee pad replacements are like $80 a pair, and I didn't want to do that. I thought, well, I'm pretty sure some guys back in the 60s tried their hand at making some tank pads themselves, so I thought I'd give it a try. If you guys have any questions, just leave me a comment below, and as always, you don't have to subscribe, but
in the last